Hello, this is Andrea Hendricks, your host for Ignite, a new podcast series launched by Authentico. Authentico is a full-service multicultural marketing and diversity, equity, and inclusion agency. Authentico creates meaningful connections to help brands broaden their horizons and reach their business goals. We partner with clients to reach diverse audiences, create work that resonates and gets results, and we help organizations develop successful multicultural workforce strategies and inclusive learning initiatives. This is a joint venture, a Kansas City-based agencies of Walt's Teacher Advertising and Tico Productions. It grew out of a shared values and goals of CEOs Charlie Teacher and Cece Rojas. Our goal and our promise is to deliver success to the brands by tapping into the vibrancy of multicultural markets and to broaden and advance DE&I initiatives. Ignite podcast series is about creating meaningful dialogue to innovate and culturally inspire. If you look up the meaning of Ignite, it shares focusing your energy and attention to creating and attracting positive outcomes for your life or your business. Today, we are honored to launch episode 3. This episode will continue to focus on the topic we covered in the first 2 episodes, perspectives from the top. What can organizations do to enable progressive strategies around diversity, equity, and inclusion? And to keep up to date with what's going on, be sure to follow Authentico on our social media channels, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Joining me on episode 3 is Chris Jones. She is the president and CEO of Spectra Diversity, headquartered in Minnesota. She became the founder and president and CEO in 2015 and launched the business in 2017. The idea for Spectrum Diversity began in 2015, and it was all centered around diversity and inclusion experts and funding partners who saw a gap in the current diversity and inclusion data collection methods. And so they wanted to think about, how do you bridge organizations' culture and employees and leaders within the organization all in one assessment process. So they found a way to create an assessment that closed the gap, which measures both. Spectra Diversity is a woman-owned diversity and inclusion company which serves clients nationwide. Let's get started. Chris, welcome to Ignite. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Well, today we're going to share with our audience progressive strategies around diversity, equity, and inclusion. I want to glean best practices and approaches from you as a great thought leader. So as you know, this is hard work, the work that we do in workforce, workplace, marketplace, and community. They're ever changing, and it requires management and leadership approaches that embrace diversity, equity, inclusion at the highest level. So my first question for you is, can you share what is the meaning of diversity, equity, and inclusion to you? And why do you think it's so essential for us to pause and reflect on that as individuals and as organizations?
The way that I've described diversity is, by the way, a person is not diverse. A group of people is diverse. So diversity is largely things that are part of their history. It's part of the family that they were born in, the community that they were born in, things that they had really no choice about. And it's differences that may make a difference. So there's the things that you can see, like we can see skin color, we can see age, but we can't see religion necessarily. We can't always see socioeconomic background. We can't see sexual orientation. There's a lot of things that we can't see. So diversity is things we can see and things we can't see. Inclusion is the full engagement in a company of all the people that make up their diverse population. So inclusion is a sense of belonging. Inclusion is being able to be yourself at work and bring your whole self, not having to change your hair color or dress a certain way in order to fit in.
Yeah. Well, I maybe jump in there. I love how you talk about belonging because that is the greatest outcome, trying to move the needle on diversity, equity, and inclusion. The outcome of that is to belong. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, and maybe we can revisit that in a moment. But I think, when you're trying to add the glue to this work, and people always ask, well, how do you know? And when do you know? Or when do you feel you've arrived? And so I'm glad that you shared. It just doesn't start and stop with diversity and inclusion. It needs to include belonging. So, and then why do you think it's so essential that we focus on this today?
I came with a few statistics here today. So, an inclusive organization, and that's where I think you need to start, is with the inclusion piece, not with a diversity piece. Because if you have inclusion, the diversity of your employee population will follow. Inclusive organizations are 2 times more likely to meet or exceed their financial targets, 3 times as likely to be high performing, 6 times more likely to be innovative and agile, and 8 times more likely to achieve better business outcomes. So in terms of the business sense, it just is a good thing for organizations to be inclusive and to make sure that they hang on to those employees, which right now are in high demand.
Right. So I know you share in your work that measurement leads to results. And so I'm so glad that you shared some of the data points that are part of the work that you do. And the work you do gives organizations what I call the power of knowledge as they seek to understand, how to best harness and embrace increasing diversity of employees, like you talked about, talent and customers and communities they serve. Another research statistic that I saw recently, HR Research Institute shared that companies are struggling to mature their DE&I initiatives. And I think when they talk about struggle, they're saying that only 22% indicating that they are in the expert or advanced stages of DE&I initiatives. So as you think about the statistics you shared, and certainly you've got a maturity model that you work with on a daily basis with clients or communities, what would you say would be progressive strategies to get these organizations unstuck? They're stuck in their way of what they should focus on first. Should it be workforce? Should it be workplace? Should it be community? Or should it be marketplace? If you had to choose one, why? To get them unstuck and to get them beyond just the adopt or the comply phase to be more advanced, what would you say as a leader or thought leader in this space?
First of all, change is really, really difficult. I would start with the workplace, start with the policies, practices, and procedures of the organization. So, and there are probably hiring practices, there's promotion practices, there's things that you can do to foster respect. Start on the things that are built in or baked into the organization. Start there because it's really hard to change people's hearts and minds. So start with changing their behaviors, their actions, and the actions that are permitted and encouraged within that organization. So
I love that. Yeah. Start within your culture first, and then your culture can attract the talent, the clients, and the community engagement that you want. If your culture is eroded, like you said, it's going to be hard to change. Well said. Well said. So when you think about what great diversity and inclusion looks like after you move the needle on these progressive strategies, start with the workplace culture. What does great diversity look like? You mentioned belonging earlier, but what else would be what you would say would be at that pioneering, progressive, transformational level?
I would say that people can come to work authentically as themselves. If you're a Black woman, for example, you don't have to straighten your hair. You could have, natural hair. If you're a man, you can wear nail polish. If you're a woman, you can dress however you want. So I think it's the teams that are at an organization like that. It's going to be a diverse team. You're going to have men and women. You're going to have different ages is very important. You're going to have different racial and ethnic differences. You're going to be welcoming to people in wheelchairs and to nursing moms and to Muslims who want to pray during the day. You're making space for everyone. And a lot of the changes that need to happen are not expensive. They're little bitty things that are easy to do. So do the little bitty easy things, and then the culture slowly but surely will turn around.
Excellent. Yeah, well said. So I love the word powering. I mentioned that earlier. And I know you launched a new book called, help me if I'm wrong, Powering Inclusive Cultures. And you talk a little bit about that. You were talking a little bit about that now, about allowing people, inviting them in and letting them be who they are. What is your book about, Powering Inclusive Culture? What is that book about?
It's really a book for leadership, for small and medium-sized businesses. The big businesses, Target and 3M are in my backyard here in Minneapolis. But small and medium-sized businesses, they might only have one HR person. They may not have any employee resource groups. So my book is really designed for the leader, the president, CEO, the top leadership of small and medium-sized businesses to understand DEI, to understand how to turn it on and have it working in your organization, and how to take those first steps that a small organization can take with limited resources, because they're competing with the big companies for employees. So they need to be in the game.
Yeah, well, and that's great because all levels need a way to onboard successfully these strategies. It's not a cookie cutter approach. It's a journey, not a sprint. And what makes sense in one organization or size may or may not make sense where someone needs to begin or evolve or transform. I know in the work that we partner together, so I'm honored that Authentico is partnering with you on the cultural assessment and climate assessment for our clients. One of the things that you talk about in that work, and I'm looking forward to reading the Powering Cultures book, is the maturity model for success, moving from adopt, comply to the next level. When you think about the maturity model and how to advocate for inclusivity in the workplace, can you kind of share your thoughts around that, how the maturity model helps with inclusivity and how individuals can advocate for that?
The maturity model is a snapshot. It's a snapshot in time. And no matter where you are on the model, you pretty much take the same steps, but your perspective of those steps is different. So you're going to start by assessing, what's going on. You collect the data with a survey, but you collect qualitative data as well. So you start with data and you start with stories. Then you move to the strategy. You set it up. What is the business case? Why is this important? You set goals and priorities, and that would be some of the policies, practices, and procedures. Then with your strategy, you look at what are the quick things that we can do to show that we're committed. Because like in one survey that was returned to us at Spectra, there was a big bunch of commotion about the dress code. Well, the executives can just change it. They can ask for input and just change it, so do that. There was another one that had a big uproar about comp time. Well, if comp time is a big, hairy deal, fix it, so those are the quick wins. The harder wins are when you look at the entire systems and the structure of the organization and what training and education needs to take place in order to make sure that leaders are being inclusive to their people. That's a bigger change.
Yeah. And that's why I love the model and the work that you do, because it really addresses the inclusivity as a core piece for success. And are there any other ways that you would share with us about how to be an advocate in that space?
Yeah, an example that comes immediately to mind is when you're pulling up to the airport, there's big signs on our freeway here, and it says If you see something, say something.
Mm-hmm.
And that could go for your organization as well. If you see something that needs changing, if you see someone that's being not included, say something. Depending on your position, you might say something to your manager, you might say something to HR, you might say something directly to that person if you feel comfortable doing so. If you see something, say something.
I love that. I am a big proponent for the C model about you have to see yourself first for change, and then you have to see others. And you cannot move to seeing approaches, and seeing approaches meaning an effective strategy or advocating for someone until you're willing to see yourself in your true authentic nature that you talked about earlier. Then you can help others move the needle when they don't have their voice or visibility, a seat at the table. Maybe your calling is to see something, say something, and also do something. And so, well said. And so those of you who are listening in the audience, if you really want to advocate for change, inclusivity is a great place to start. Start with yourself and ensure that you feel comfortable being authentic and being included in the workplace, but then bring someone else along if they don't have the voice and visibility. Maturity levels we all go through that depending on the environment and location we're in. And so I love the way that you position being an advocate in the workplace, and I hope everybody out there is taking notes. As we move towards closing the episode today, I always ask the presenters or facilitators today sharing to maybe share with us, the audience, a favorite best practice DE&I resource that's your go-to. It could be a tip. It could be an article. What would be your best practice approach you want to leave the audience today?
I would say one thing that people can do, because one of the comments that we get in our assessments quite frequently is, oh, I don't see color, or everyone's equal. And we all have biases, and people are very reluctant to admit that they have biases. There is a very easy, it's free, it doesn't take a lot of time, but the implicit association test that was created by Harvard University will show you where your biases lie. I'm a business owner. I firmly believe that women can embrace technology, women can be business owners. And yet when I took the gender one, it showed that I have a bias towards men being in business and women being in teaching and other sort of more traditional roles. Well, I know in my mind that that's not true, but my bias is so baked into who I am that I could not trick my mind into going faster and answering the questions to show that women are equally capable as men.
Well, I think you're right, and I'll let you finish that statement. Is that beliefs versus action practice? So you can model the way is ideal, but you might have beliefs, but then your practice, if they go against your beliefs, then that's where the rub is, and that's the gap that you have to work on. What else were you going to say about that?
Well, I was going to say that once you're aware of your biases, you start to see them all the time. It's like when you buy a red car, then all you see is red cars. Once I learned what the plant, a hosta, was, I saw hosta everywhere. And it's the same with your biases. Once you realize where your biases are, you can start to see them in real time. You begin to see them when you look at past actions. But when you keep practicing, you can eventually see your biases showing up in real time, and that's where real meaningful change can happen.
Oh, well, thank you, Chris. I could go on and love to hear your thoughts on this topic and others for hours. So I want to thank you for your insightful perspective. I know everyone listening gained additional insights and best practice approaches to this very topic. So as we leave episode 3, I want to take the moment to thank you for listening and encourage you to continue to climb in this space. power forward. We hope you enjoyed this new episode of Ignite, and we look forward to having you engaged in future programs. See you next time. Go out and ignite your strategies.